the largest coordinated attack by Iran. At this moment, while you are watching this, 5 million people are sitting in underground shelters in Israel, not for an hour, not like a drill, but for days. Schools are closed, parliament can barely meet, and the country's own Ministry of Health had to warn citizens to stop running toward bomb shelters so quickly as they are getting injured upon arrival. Let that sink in for a second. A modern democracy, one of the most technologically advanced military powers in the world, has had to tell its people to slow down when running toward a shelter because the act of running itself has become dangerous. That is not a war that is going well for anyone. That is a war that has crossed into something completely different. And what happened in the early hours of March 19th is the clearest proof that this conflict has fundamentally changed its form. Because what Iran just did was not a missile attack. It was a coordinated architectural assault on every system Israel has built to protect itself, all at once, from all directions, designed not only to kill people, but to make normal life structurally impossible. And on top of that, simultaneously Iran set fire to the Gulf's energy infrastructure. Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, Brent crude exceeded $8 per barrel. European gas prices rose 25% in a single day, more than 60% above where they were when this war began. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. 20% of the world's oil passes through it. 20% of global liquefied natural gas. And none of the governments involved in this war have publicly answered the only question that really matters right now, which is, what does winning mean when the global economy is absorbing the damage? Exactly what happened. Why Israel's defenses are struggling to stop it in ways most reports have not clearly explained. And why the energy dimension of this conflict is now the part that should genuinely alarm you more than any missile count. Because the details here matter in ways that change how you understand everything you have been reading about this war. With what Iran actually launched, because labeling this as a ballistic missile attack misses what makes it tactically different from everything that came before. The JC confirmed this as Waves 63 and 64 of Operation True Promise 4 and described it as the largest coordinated attack package of the entire war. 80 military and military support targets across Israel, from the deep south to Haifa in the far north, not spread over days, 80 targets in a single concentrated window, and the central piece of that attack was 9 Khorramshahr 4 ballistic missiles. Now, most people hear the phrase multiple warhead missile and imagine something that splits into 2 or 3 pieces near the target. That is not what this weapon does. The Khorramshahr 4 can release up to 24 small bombs from a single warhead. Each carries approximately 11 pounds of high explosive and they disperse over a radius of up to 5 miles, falling at high speed onto whatever is below: houses, roads, parks, military positions. There is no discrimination in that dispersion pattern. CNN field analysts examined 2 Khorramshahr strike sites and confirmed impact patterns spread across 7 and 8 miles, respectively. Random distribution across a vast land area from a single missile body. Now think about what that means for a defense system. Arrow intercepts ballistic missiles at high altitude. That is what it is designed to do, and it does it well. But here is the structural problem that most analysis misses. Even a successful arrow interception can fail to stop the small bombs because those submunitions are released before the missile body is destroyed, or because the interception angle is not head-on, or because the warhead separates during the terminal phase. By the time the missile reaches the target zone, what the interceptor is actually chasing is a detached object moving at extraordinary speed. The Khorramshahr 4 reaches Mach 16 outside the atmosphere and Mach 8 within it. It carries a mid-course navigation system that corrects its trajectory in space at a phase where ground-based electronic warfare cannot reach it. Its hypergolic liquid fuel can remain in storage for years, reducing launch preparation time to approximately 12 minutes. This is not a primitive weapon. CSIS analysts trace its lineage to North Korea's Hwasong-10, which itself descends from the Soviet submarine-launched R-27 ballistic missile. Decades of engineering in that structure, and Israeli experts are on record saying the only reliable response is to intercept the parent missile as high as possible with a 3 before submunition release. Once the small bombs separate, the problem becomes, in their words, much more difficult and in practice may no longer be interceptable. A missile defense analyst who consults for Israeli defense firms said it directly. Cluster munitions are a mechanism to bypass active missile defense. That is the tactical logic Iran is now using. And here is why that logic is intensifying. Iran's overall ballistic missile inventory has been degraded by attacks from the United States and Israel. Fewer launchers means each missile has to do more damage. The cluster warhead is the mathematical answer to that constraint. Iran is now equipping approximately half of each ballistic missile salvo directed at Israel with cluster warheads. And the results are not abstract. 2 construction workers dead in Yehud, near Tel Aviv. They were at an open-air work site, not in a shelter. A couple in their 70s found dead in Ramat, just outside their safe room. A 30-year-old foreign worker killed in Mosul by cluster shrapnel. 3 Palestinian women killed in the West Bank by Iranian missiles. The first fatalities in that territory since the war began. An Israeli military official publicly stated this week that the country's air defenses are among the best in the world and then immediately followed it by saying that defense is not infallible. When an active official says that publicly, the gaps are real. Now, the missiles were not even the whole story because what happened simultaneously on the northern border is what transforms this from a missile story into a structural crisis. Hezbollah is not acting on its own here. The IRG confirmed on March 11th that Wave 40 of Operation True Promise 4 was, in their own words, a coordinated joint operation between the Revolutionary Guards and the Lebanese resistance. That was the first time Iran publicly acknowledged real-time operational synchronization with Hezbollah during this conflict. And the pattern of March 18th and 19 showed exactly what that synchronization looks like in practice. While Iranian ballistic missiles struck central and southern Israel, Hezbollah launched coordinated barrages in Haifa, Nahariya, and across Galilee, an average of 100 rockets per day, timed to land in the same window as the Iranian launches. The objective is not symbolic. It is architectural. The strategy is to saturate every layer of Israeli air defense from every cardinal direction simultaneously. Force the system to choose what to intercept and what to let through, because no defense system can stop everything when it is being pressured from multiple vectors at the same time. And Hezbollah still has significant capacity to keep doing this. Estimates put its remaining arsenal at approximately 25,000 missiles, 10,000 drones, and thousands of elite Radwan fighters. Since March 3rd, the group has claimed more than 280 separate attack waves. Israel has responded with more than 250 strikes in Lebanon. Ground forces are pushing further south of the Litani River. More than 1 million Lebanese have been displaced. That is nearly 20% of the country's entire population. Major General Rafi Milo, head of Israel's Northern Command, called Hezbollah's re-entry into the war a serious mistake, but then followed with a statement that attacks will continue and intensify. That is not the language of a commander who sees a quick resolution ahead. But here is what you should pay attention to, because this is the part of this war that most coverage is ignoring: the energy dimension. On March 18th, Israel struck Iran's South P gas field. That is the largest natural gas reserve on the planet, shared between Iran and Qatar and the Persian Gulf. Iran's president warned of uncontrollable consequences that, in his words, could engulf the entire world. Within hours, the IRG retaliated against energy infrastructure across the Gulf under the designation of Wave 63. The industrial city of Ras Laffan in Qatar took direct missile hits. That facility is the largest liquefied natural gas production complex on Earth. It accounts for approximately 20% of global LNG supply. Production had already been suspended since March 2nd after previous drone attacks. The new round caused structural damage that energy analysts say could delay restart by more than 2 months. The Yanbu refinery in Saudi Arabia on the Red Sea was struck. That matters specifically because the Saudis had been routing oil exports west through the Red Sea precisely to avoid the closed Strait of Hormuz. Iran hid the alternative route. 2 Kuwaiti oil refineries were set on fire. The Habshan gas facility in the way and a field in Abu Dhabi had to shut down. After that, Qatar expelled Iranian military attaches and gave them 24 hours to leave the country. Saudi Arabia's top diplomat said publicly that whatever trust existed before has now been completely broken. The URG issued a direct statement after the Gulf attacks. If this happens again, subsequent attacks on your energy infrastructure and that of your allies will not stop until total destruction. That is an operational statement, not posturing language. It is explicitly telling Gulf states that their energy assets are now a permanent target category and telling the same to Washington, specifying U.S. interests rather than Israeli ones. That framing is deliberate. Trump responded by threatening to massively destroy South Parks if Iran continues attacking Gulf energy. 3 Israeli officials separately told Reuters that the strike on South Park was coordinated with Washington. Trump publicly claimed the United States knew nothing about it. Both statements cannot be simultaneously true. And that contradiction tells you something important about the information environment around this war right now. No one involved is telling the full story. The Pentagon has asked the White House to approve more than $200 billion in war funding from Congress. The United States has struck more than 7,000 targets inside Iran. 13 U.S. service members have died in the region. Iran reports more than 100 dead on its side, including approximately 450 women and children. And through all of this, Israel claims it has already destroyed more than 70% of Iran's ballistic missile launchers. So either that number is significantly inaccurate or Iran maintained reserves in dispersed locations that survived the entire campaign and then coordinated an attack on 80 targets, while those launchers were supposedly 70% destroyed. Both explanations carry serious implications because if the assessment is overstated, the entire strategic picture looks different. And if Iran really did this with 30% of its launcher capacity, then the remaining capacity is an ongoing threat regardless of what happens next. What happened on March 18th and 19 is not a missile exchange. It is the moment this conflict stopped being primarily about military targets and became a resource war with economic consequences that extend far beyond the region and that none of the parties involved have the ability to fully control. Oil above $113. European gas up more than 60% since the war began. The Strait of Hormuz closed. The largest LNG facility in the world offline for months. $200 billion requested from Congress with no end framework in sight and 5 million people sitting underground in a functioning democracy injuring themselves running to shelter, waiting for something to change. The question that no one in Washington, Tehran or Jerusalem has publicly answered is the one that defines where this goes. What does an acceptable end to this look like? And the silence on that question from all the governments involved is the most important thing happening in all of this.